All right, everybody, welcome back to Bigger and Louder. It's Johnny
Yeah,
D.
and Big Tony, just Big Tony.
All right, Anthony. So I sucked it up and I watched the first couple episodes of Alice in Borderlands, and I
Yeah,
have
I
to
was about to ask you
say,
that. Like, if you had a chance to watch it, like, have you actually gotten a chance to really digest it, like I told you to, or have you been just milking it and scraping it on and off, man? Like, tell me the whole
I
thing.
mean, I mean, I watched 3 episodes. I'm on the
Mhm.
fourth. So you say, give it 4 episodes. So already without like totally spoiling it, but like, who cares at this point? It's years old. Already I'm questioning the whole premise because these three friends, they duck into this bathroom and all of a sudden they come out and everybody's gone, with exception to these people that are now playing this game.
Yeah.
So it would seem to me that the other people didn't disappear, but they did, or they were somehow transported. They were the gamers, they're transported. I don't know how. Maybe that'll be the mystery, but it seems like very on the nose. Like, okay, well, clearly this is like something, something happened to them. I think. I'll say that the first couple games seem, but maybe simple is the right word. Yeah, simple is the right word.
Simple. That's a harsh word to say, man. Simple. Why would you think it's simple? Well, let me ask you this question. So I'm going to do this is a spoiler right now for anyone who hasn't seen the series. So in the first game, right, like they're trapped in the building, and it's obviously the game where they're stuck in the building and they have to choose the one door or the other. One door leads them to the safety. The other door is essentially walking you
Correct.
dead.
That's right. Okay.
And
Sorry.
they're like, and the guy says, like, I think his name's Arazu. He's like, this isn't a game because games have rules. This is a game of chance. So he has to solve how he can figure out which is the right door. And you were probably just like me watching it, like, yeah, it could be left, it could be right. Which one is it? And he actually ends up showing you how he solves the puzzle. He's like, well, the building has to probably be about X amount of feet because we were in front of the building. He goes and explains there's like two Audis hanging. I forgot how he explains it, but
It was
he gives
way
you
too complicated, man. Come on. It was way
no.
too
I loved it.
complicated.
I loved
Like, I'm
every
like, there's
second of
no
it.
way the schmuck figured this out. That's what I was really thinking. And I'm like, okay, and let's say that they did. Okay,
Mhm.
let's say that they did. Like, they figure it out, they get out of there, they don't get burnt to a crisp. The next game that they're playing is tag. Now, there's ends up being a couple people running around this building, or walking, technically. I guess they were walking around this building with like Mac 11s or whatever, and it's like, oh my God, what is going on here? Like, some type of, they were just they had guns. Everybody else was just running. Some chick is jumping from fucking floor to floor, like parkour shit. I'm like, all right, like that is cool, but all right, I don't believe it. And then everybody else is basically old and just in the line of fire and doesn't know what's going on. So
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, how do they figure this out? Like, the way that they got there was just so obscure. I think that's what I was really
Right.
thinking.
I think what's spoiling for you is like
It's very simple. I don't know.
you don't know how these people actually got to this sort of like barren wasteland, and why are they the only ones with other individuals playing this game. That's also part of the hype, because I'm going to tell you this now: when you make it to season 2, to the final episode, which I told you you are and you will, it all comes full circle where it's like, whoa, like I didn't see that coming. Like I mean, listen, I'm guilty of this. There are times I didn't give film or shows a chance. I wrote it out and I was happy because it grew on me. And I was very happy, like, wow, this actually came full circle towards the end. And it really kind of blew my mind away. That's how this show is going to do it. Again, for me, I was blown away the first episode, and only got better and better because it was just different games. It was getting you as the viewer to interact with it. Like, how are they going to solve these puzzles, et cetera, et cetera. And you're going to see there's not one game that's alike. If anything, it's different strategy, different thinking, different, mechanisms of like strategy and like out,
Right.
ways.
I like that because the different suits, everybody like gets a phone. And on that phone, the way that they dictate the game is by suit of card So diamonds, spades, hearts, and clubs. And then the difficulty of that game is by the ranking, the card number. So 2 through ace, right?
Right.
So, right now, they've done in the first couple episodes, one pretty harsh one, which was like a 7 of hearts. So yeah, I'm all right. I'll stick it out for now. I got
Yeah.
like nothing better to do when it comes to bullshit TV. So I'll write that one. But I really do want you to check out there's 2 shows. One is funny, a comedy.
Okay.
Resident Alien.
Wait, I got you. When you say comedy, before you explain this, is it just like your recommendation of like Nikki Stanicky, like that kind of comedy, or is it kind of like on its own little path? Because I took your advice on the last one, and honestly, it was just dirt McGurk. It was just shit. So
Anthony has a terrible sense of humor, though, so that's the problem. Anthony hasn't thought a movie was funny since Dumb and Dumber came out.
Listen, the difference between quality, John and I, like when I ask for like a glass of wine, I want a glass of cab. John's like, give me a wine out of the box. That's his type of quality. So that's also relevant to his way of
give me a cab. Give me a nice cab. You can get a Cabernet for $3.
Yeah, but you want the wine in the box though. Like that's what you want. That's your type of quality. I want to have the box. They even sell those anymore.
They call it a goon sack they call it a goon sack when you're in Australia.
A goon sack. My God.
There's a game in college you can play. It's called Slap the Bag, and people like hold the bag and they pass it around and you drink out of it.
Listen, these names are getting too close to death in Red Line. What it should really be.
Okay, so anyway, this show Resident Alien is funny. It's a sci-fi show that's like now on Netflix, 2 seasons. I'm gonna butcher the guy's name, but his name is like Alan Tudzik or something like that, and he is also the pirate from Dodgeball. He's the guy that plays the pirate from Dodgeball, and he plays this character that crash lands on Earth. He was here to destroy Earth, but his plane malfunctions and crash lands, and then to assimilate while he finishes his plan, like get to destroy the Earth, he takes the form of one of the townspeople, right? And from then on, it is just hysterical because I will say that. Yeah, it's like 1, it's vulgar. Like they curse. 2, there's like a lot of gore. I want to say violence, but like a lot of gore. And then I'd say what really gets me more than anything is like kind of the commentary on humans and what we're doing to, similar to what we've talked about, what we're doing to this planet, as a species and whatnot. And so he makes a lot of commentary. Like that sounds pretty objective, right?
So if I'm understanding it, like it sounds like a cross between like a reality show where he kind of talks like The Office to the people, but also maybe it's kind of like where like there's always like a theory out there, and South Park touched on this, where like we as human beings are like a show, like everything that all the awfulness and the the conflicts of interest that we as human beings bestow upon each other, between like war, pollution, politics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It seems like that's like a show the aliens are now finding interesting. They can just turn on whatever type of show they want. And it's just like, we're going to comment on like how fucked up aliens are, which are humans, right? Is that I'm kind of getting here?
I mean, you couldn't be more far from the plot of that. I'm trying to describe of this.
Okay, well, that's how it came off.
Like a great show. We should write that show.
Well, listen, someone's gonna hear this in 2 seconds. It's gonna be on Hollywood before we and they're gonna claim the rights.
When we get off, we're gonna throw this into ChatGPT to write a screenplay.
We're gonna write a screenplay. All right, guys. We're moving from podcasting to screenwriting.
The other show I wanted to tell you about was 3 Body Problem. Now, I bring this up not because it's like overly good. It's like decent if you like sci-fi. But it also has to do with aliens. And I'm like, man, I, for one, especially with like all the things that you kind of see now, like people, and especially what the Air Force and some of these classified documents and footage that's been released, like I definitely think there's aliens, bro. What about you?
Oh, I'm 100%. I agree. I thought we were going to disagree on this one. I thought you're going to be like, no, I don't believe in them. I completely agree. There are aliens out there. And that's not even like a belief, like
multiple types,
right? I would think, yeah. Because here's the thing, like when people use the word, oh, I believe in aliens, oh, I believe in, which, the chicken came before the egg, or I believe in Santa Claus. Like, you're believing. The word belief is basically you think it actually happened, but there's no truth, or, there's no evidence to support it. Where our evidence is supporting is a little unique, and this may not be actually fit like evidence like you're holding into your hand, like Dick Tracy brings like the clue bag and like, you bust a criminal, but rather when you think about the fact that like the sun is the closest star to us, and this universe is so large that it can't be measured in, probably distance. I mean, we've come close to probably understanding how big the universe is if there's a limit to it. But when you think about all the galaxies, all the solar systems, all the stars that are out there that are potential planets that go on for millions and millions and millions of light years, and just it's endless. To assume that we as Earth is the only planet that has sentient beings, human organisms on it, whether it's humans or trees, birds, plants, this, that, whatever, that is mathematically impossible. Right? To assume like we're the only planet in the entire universe that has the living organisms in it. That's mathematically impossible. It can't. I refuse to believe it. And that being said, to further add on to that, now the question is, now to take it a step further, is does one believe in aliens? But really the question is beyond that is, have we been visited? That's really, I think, where the two sort of like get flip-flopped onto each other, and you don't know which one to sort of like takes precedent or the other. I'm a firm believer in the fact that we have been visited at some point, because we can't prove it. I can speculate all I want between the time back millions of years before the dinosaurs, when they were obviously organisms on this earth, and who knows, millions of years before them, like what was prior. Like, it's very possible that there was aliens that came and visited. We just can't prove it. But to think like millions of years prehistoric to the present, that's what we're talking about. Like, no one can ever date that.
Yeah, and I like that you said that, dude, because like that's actually what they call the Drake equation, and they talk about that in that show, and that's something that's like one of the things that just kind of like makes me think that that's like one of the most sensible, like logical things to believe, because really what it says is that the average star, is where the average star is in our galaxy. Some of those stars have planets just like ours, our solar system. The average number of planets could potentially support life is X in these other solar systems, right? And then you multiply that beyond all the different stars and galaxies and blah, 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 across, how many, infinite space or whatever. Well, or I guess not infinite space, but, seemingly infinite space. That's what the Drake equation says. And I like that, because like, that's really what grounds you in like, wow, all right, well, it's kind of like ignorant to think that ignorant, and I would say egocentric or earth-centric, to think that we're some type of
we're by ourselves. Yeah, we're not alone. There's no way. You know what actually blew my mind? I already knew. Really kind of already flipped my mind on this. This was years ago when I was a kid. I remember it was in elementary school, and they had a I forgot his exact title, but he worked in that department of like, astrology and whatever. And I remember the one thing I took away from this guy's presentation was, he says, if we fill this entire school up with sand, every single room, this lunchroom, the cafeteria, the music room, all the hallways, all the classrooms, all the way to the tippy top, all to the top of the ceiling. He said, there are still more stars and galaxies than if you were to count each single grain of sand in that school. That blew my mind, to think that, like, how big the fucking universe is, and to assume like out of all that, and that's not even tip. That's just the tip of the iceberg.
That's the visible universe.
That's the visible universe, right? We're not talking like the unknown, more or less, and to assume like we're the only ones that this is actually life on this planet. Now, you might even question, like, are there beings like what we would classify as humans on other life, right, as sentient beings? Or again, is it kind of like, is there life? Like, have you ever seen the movie Life with Jake Gyllenhaal and Ryan Reynolds? You ever see that movie? The movie Life?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. So like the real comparison is like, if we were to compare apples and oranges, are there sentient beings out there, or are there just other different organisms that have just taken different shape and form because of just, the ozone layer? If you have one,
They're at they're at different stages in their evolutionary cycle, right? Exactly.
Right. Maybe
Yeah,
they
and
weren't
like
extinct. That's the you have to compare that.
that's one, that's one theory too. And then I think like what's even more interesting are the theories that say like, well, here's all the reasons that like aliens might have not visited Earth yet, which like obviously we both disagree with, but like I think though those are interesting too, where it's like one of them that I find kind of funny is like the zoo hypothesis, or like where they think it's like, hey, or like Star Trek, for example, where the Starfleet basically had this command, or this directive, I guess you would call it, like mission directive, that they would not interfere on a like sub evolutionary species that was progressing naturally to like X state. Like they wouldn't step in with their own technology or own influence. They would let it develop naturally. And like that's kind of what that says, is that, yes, other beings or whatever see us, but like we're not there yet to like interact with them, and that's probably to me one of the most practical, like, because it's like, well, okay, well, if they're here and they're walking among us and like they're poking and prodding or they're abducting these people, like who knows if there's different types, which is also what Resident Alien talks about, different types of aliens that are out there. Like what then possibly could, or like what reason could they possibly have to hide themselves, right? They just don't want us to know, because what it would cause complete chaos. It would crumble our governments, and
Well, I think
think?
I think to that point, I mean, if you ask me my opinion, is let's assume let's just pretend in the realm of make believe that there are aliens currently living among us, like the movie Men in Black, and they're just trying to live normal lives and just be under the radar. If they were to, let's say, sort of interact or interfere with the humans' daily lives, if anything, they're probably doing a case study on us, living among us, to understand like how, why, reason. And it's like a sample size that has to be like tested over like different like life spans. Like, all right, we had like the baby boomers, and we had beyond the baby boomers, we had the next people like Generation X, and then we have the millennials. It's like they're all being like, each generation sort of has its own living code in which how like each subgroup is lives amongst those groups, and they're probably, if anything, making notes about like the evolution of our interests and our involvement of like what's important, what's not important, our education, our level of intelligence. And they're probably reporting back on this like, man, these fucking humans are easily influenced by technology, means they're easily controlled. Right? Like that would be my assumption on it. Like, let's just sit in the background like a wallflower, make some notes, report back to report back to the royalty, whoever's running this experiment. Because remember, experiments is not just like a one time we do it for a day and it's done. It takes years and years and years of studying. Just like the coronavirus when that came out, like that was studied by like virologists and evolutionary biologists over years of how it was mutating, and like how we were able to like understand like where it was and where it's going, where we could possibly project it to be. But that would be my opinion on the matter, is that that's why they're not interacting with us. They're just making notes, if that was true.
Well, that's also kind of like that zoo theory then, right? Like they're just like watching us in our cage, letting us go around. Like one thing I don't subscribe to is this simulation theory thing.
Like we're in the we're in the Matrix, like we're literally plugged in. That's if anything, more people are tuned to believe that than the alien theory. Like people believe more in that theory, that we're literally plugged in somewhere, that this is all simulation, and we could be. And actually, I never knew that's why the Matrix, the film trilogy, was based on like that idea, that hypothesis.
Right? Well, no shit.
Like I thought it was a movie many years. No, I'm serious. I'm ignorant. I really thought it was just a movie, like another sci-fi action movie. But it wasn't until years later I happened to hear that conversation in passing. Like, no, like the theory is that we are plugged in, and like, we're Bill Gates is involved. Like Bill Gates, like his name got thrown around. Yeah, don't get me involved with that.
Well, I will tell you that. I will tell you, Connect the Dots was never Anthony's favorite game. But yeah, like Matrix definitely talks about simulation theory, and I think like to that degree, people would be witnessing more anomalies, right? Like we've never seen, or now with all the phones, we've seen so many fake things come around. We've never seen somebody like jump off a building and survive, right? Or jump building to
Well,
building.
no, they're not fucking Neo. They're not fucking Keanu Reeves, man. Like, obviously, they're not impossible to kill. Like they said in the movie The Matrix, like, because you're plugged in doesn't mean you can't die. It just means you don't fucking superpowers that can leap tall buildings in one bound.
But wouldn't
like
you
he did.
think that, like, or maybe what gets so new then, like, all right, if you're saying that it's that the timeline was correct in Terminator, and that here in 2024 we're in a simulation, that would mean then that like computers were either invented like in 1970s 1980s like they were, and we were plugged in sometime after that, or like part of the simulation put us through the whole invention of computers, right? Because
Yeah, I'd say saying,
we're
yeah.
not in a simulation with fucking Fifth Element flying cars. We're not in a simulation with Elysium type like thing floating above us with the
Yet though.
starship.
Well, yeah, but here's the other thing. Like, again, it's just a
But what do you mean?
wrinkle.
Yeah, if we're in a simulation, the machines have taken over, and what
Well,
the
right,
fuck?
but no, like, well, in the movie The Matrix, right? Like that was a simulation of like what they thought the current state of the world was, and right, they have history books that dated back, like yeah, like in the the inventing of the printing press, but versus like the invention of cars, into like the technology obviously advanced in the Matrix for humans to obviously move forward. It's just the computer system wants them keeping on that track of thinking because that's probably where the world was prior to the invention of AI. And yeah, when we get into AI, it's like, is AI going to take over and start learning at a rapid rate that it just learns? Kind of like what's that movie with Ryan Reynolds in it? It's talks about it briefly. It's not as like archaic as the Terminator, but
Free Guy,
Free Guy, like he was a character in a video game,
an NPC,
but
yeah, a
he
non-player
learned,
character, yeah,
but he was part of the background, but he ended up learning. He's like, oh no, it's an actual real AI. It's learning as we're
conscious. He
going
was
along.
conscious.
He was conscious, etc. Like that's what people are fearful of like, and well, to your point, it's like when computers start taking over, right? They can manipulate our system, make us think and believe what we want to. Like they said, if I take a bite of this apple, is it really what apple tastes like, or is like the Matrix telling me this is what my brain should say it used to taste like? And right, it's like, again, the example you gave is like, which came first, the chicken or the egg, to the point you given, right? If we are really plugged in, it's a mind fuck. That's the thing. No one's ever going to fucking know. It's just, we can always keep bringing evidence to the table, and there's going to be evidence that, counteracts that person's evidence, or theories and opinions, and using common sense and basic logic that we currently have. But the point, back to the main point, is that is still more of a believable topic than people really believing in aliens and extraterrestrials. That's like really kind of wild when you get to the root.
Okay, I'd like to ask our audience then. We'll put the poll out there. Tell us what you think, bigger and louder fans. What do you think is more probable, that aliens exist out in our stars or that we are in a simulation? Vote now.
Yeah, please.
Love it.
Now, the next thing's going to bake your noodle, though, John. Before we get into that, because we're kind of
you're going to take a twist. You're going to take a.
We're going to take a twist now. Now, here's the thing. Do you think that time travel is possible? Now, this could be a very long-winded conversation, but we're going to keep it like fair and respectable to the best of our ability without fucking punching each other through the internet right now, because I have a feeling we're gonna probably disagree more than we might agree. I hope I'm proven wrong. But
I don't know. Okay, well, let me just say this first. I will say that the movie The Time Machine that came out in like the early 2000s was absolutely the worst movie I've ever seen. So
the worst?
It was the worst. I just want to put that out there in the theater. Anyway.
Wow, that's never a powerful thing, man. The worst you've ever seen in your life?
Yes. So then next I'll say that I don't think that we've been visited or it's been invented yet, or like some of these time traveled yet. Like I don't think the realm.
Well, let me cut you off. It has actually happened. It has. It's a
Oh, shut
fact.
the fuck up. Shut.
No, I'm serious. No, I'm telling you, this is not. I'm not making this up. This is no. So I don't. I'm not a physicist to give you that the professional terminology, whatever. But
Okay, hold on. Caution.
no,
Anthony is not a physicist. In case you were confused.
yeah, guys, sorry. I don't want to like ruin everyone's expectations. Yeah, I'm not a physicist, but I want to make sure I keep it clean to make sure that I'm giving the correct information because what I'm about to say is 100% factual. So, John, to your first statement that you actually think that it hasn't been done, it has. I forgot what year it was, but it was when the two astronauts went up in space. They were twin brothers, right? First, let me back up even further. Time travel is possible in the future because that's how physics works. Like you can actually run faster and actually time will speed slower while you're running faster. That's a fact. So what they did was the two twin brothers, one guy, they both started off in the space station. The one other guy went around the Earth. He came back and he actually ended up becoming 1 or 2 minutes younger than his other twin brother. Like that's a fact that's how the science works. So time travel in the future is possible. The real question is time travel to the past? Is that even feasible? And the answer is currently people are going to say,
I'm sorry, but before you go here
what?
poisoning our
Poisoning?
minds.
Wow. Okay, we're getting into it, guys.
Where the fuck did you read that? And how would they go about testing, for that matter, whether or not somebody was 2 minutes younger than when they came back? How would you measure that? How do you know exactly to the minute how old I am?
Because the two of them were twin brothers who were born at the exact same time. It wasn't like one twin brother was born 5 minutes later, 2 minutes later. Like
they literally came out of the hole at the same time.
One kid came out and
the vagina.
One kid came out 10 seconds later. The other kid came out. So they were born.
Okay, so they were 10 seconds apart.
They were born in the same minute. So therefore, like they're twin brothers. What they wanted to prove was like, well, we can't have, it's not Back to the Future where you get into a fucking DeLorean and we're going to fucking send you off. And all of a sudden you come back 1 minute later and disappear. No, they put the guy, the space pod, he went around the Earth. And when he came back, it was the same experiment, just without the fucking DeLorean and all the special effects of Hollywood. When he came back, he was like 2 or 3 minutes slower, or his watch or whatever he had on, than his brother, which means he was younger than his actual twin brother because that's what they basically did. He went further into the future around the Earth, came back, and he's like, I'm actually younger than you now because of that's how fast he was going. So the point is that time travel is possible in the future. We just haven't harnessed it in the way the movies have depicted, meaning you get into a machine and like you're speeding up so fast that the world is actually.
I also agree with you that like I think it has to do with gravity. So like we have not verified that story.
Is gravity real?
No.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Your story about your twin astronauts there, buddy.
It's not a story. It's an actual real case that happened. It's not like a fairy tale story, a Grimm's fairy tale. Go look it up right now.
Creative editing.
Now, here's where the biggest debate is, and this is where I'm going to lean towards more, not a believer, but yeah, I guess you can call me a believer in this, but it's really when we talk about traveling in time in the past, like meaning we know for a fact that we can go into the future because that's how physics works. But it's like, what you saw in Back to the Future that they jump back in time where time's linear. That is, again, because of how physics and work and how it all, again, without using the correct terminology, but it's because of that we cannot leap into the past. That's actually much more harder. In order to do that, you would need to create a black hole. So here's where I get into a debate with my father-in-law, who is like, he's actually the head of the Skeptics Conference. He goes there every year, and I think he's head of the chapter. He's a big skeptic.
To hear more about that.
Yeah. So anyway, here's what we have deduced. And he has said and put his foot down explaining why time travel to the past is not possible. And I said, yes, currently, if we use the current technology or what we know, I believe it. But what I got him to agree with was the fact that black holes, which do exist in the universe,
yes,
right? That is what you would need to go into and actually go into the past and kind of like a wormhole essentially. So I said, well, do you believe in black holes? Do they exist? He's like, yes. Okay, great. So then time travel exists. We just have not been
black holes are observable. Yeah.
Right, but I told him that we just have not been able to harness it or to engineer it to our needs. It's kind of like, so the best example is kind of like what happened in Iron Man, right? If you remember what happened to him. So if you remember when what's his face came in, when the dude came in and he tells him like, Tony Stark, I want you to build this reactor and make it smaller like Tony Stark did. He's like, I can't do it. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, technically the technology doesn't exist. He's like, well, it's right here. I'm asking you just to make it smaller. He's like, so the point is like, we know the technology exists. We just have not been able to manipulate it to our benefit or for our greed, whatever it may be. So like, that's my argument to the idea that yes, we can time travel to the past. It's just, we don't have it in front of us like a telephone or a remote control. If that makes sense.
Okay, so there's like things that like definitively prove that time is also like a distance, right? Like because
Right.
what I mean by that, like it takes light, the time to get here from the sun and time to get here from other stars. So all the light that you're seeing in the stars, all the light that you're seeing in the sky from the stars
has already traveled
very
old. Yeah.
very
Very, very old.
billions of light years, 100 million, however far, and it's old, right? So again, like somehow you would have to be able to trace and harness and use that light, bend that light to get back to the beginning of it instantly. Like, right? What what I'm saying? Like, if you could like ride the
right. It's just
I don't know.
Not right.
The whole premise of that, and it's funny that we got back to this. The whole premise of that show, Three Body Problem on Netflix, is just that like that these stars and these other exoplanets or these planets are so far away that our technology, our communications can't get there fast enough. One scientist, and this is part of the show, figures out that she could bounce a signal off of the sun and boom, boom, and like ricochet it off the sun, and it would amplify the signal and get there faster than if she shot it directly. So
I'm not going
to find out that,
oh man.
Yeah. So hold on. So come to find out, they basically show that the alien species has the technology to communicate instantly, and they do it through like a proton, and they like somehow flex this proton, the singular proton, and grow it and shrink it to like do things instantaneously and hear and communicate instantaneously with like something very far away. So that's all the science fiction piece of it. It's very interesting.
But something to your point, like we just mentioned that one, about what she did about like ricocheting the signal from the sun versus going directly. The two things that came to my mind is kind of like what happened in the movie Apollo 13 when they were like, okay, we're stuck in like the space pod. Like we have two options. We can either, try and just turn the damn thing around and get it back home, or let's ricochet him around the moon to like use the moon's gravity slingshot back. But also that's that movie. Yes, it was a real event. That's probably what actually happened. But yeah, that was all Hollywood to show us that. But what's actually real is like kind of the same thing when like you're traveling from, let's say, the East Coast. Like, let's say you take an international airline from, let's say, point A to point B.
That's not the same, man.
No, it's not the same. Stay with me on this. It's like we're not going to use the word ricochet, but like to get to the place you want to go, you're not going to make a straight line over the globe, like from, let's say, here to here. What you're doing is you're going over, like, I forgot the words they use, like over the globe, like here and down, the curvature of the curvature. And if you actually take a string, this is no bullshit. If you go have a globe or have means to find a globe, if you take a string, start it at point A, and if you actually stretch it to a certain point, like certain destinations, you see it bends, showing you that that's where you need to go over the curvature. It's the same idea. Like
it's the very simple thing. Like when you fly to Tokyo from New York, you don't fly over the entire United States. You fly over like the North Pole.
Exactly. Like, and that's kind of the same thing. Like, I guess what she's trying, I guess the
For
science
those of you that
behind
don't
it.
believe it, that the Earth is round.
Yeah, flat earthers. Yeah, that's the signal for flat earthers. That's
Get
what,
the fuck out of here.
get the fuck out of here. But yeah, the wrap up that point is like the fact that she's ricocheting a signal. It's sort of the same premise. It's like, we used to think, oh, the fastest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Well, no, it's like depending upon where you are in relation to whatever objects
And
or
gravity and how far
gravity. It's like,
exactly.
no, we got to go around
You're
it.
gonna really like that show. Then I would actually recommend that you watch this Three Body Problem because it has a lot to do like with the physics that I don't understand necessarily, but
I don't have the yeah.
It's interesting, man. To put it on your list because it's definitely good. But moral of the story is, they do exist.
They exist, people. And I dare someone to come on the show to argue that they don't.
Awesome, guys. All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been another Bigger or Louder, baby. We'll talk to you all soon.